Hello everyone, welcome to Hindustan Times. I am Vikram Singh Chandel, your host for today's special webinar, The Dancing Frog Project, Conservation and Challenges. We are excited to have Dr. Madhushri Mudge with us today. She is a well-known researcher, writer, and thinker in conservation science. Dr. Mudge launched the Dancing Frog Project after winning a fellowship from the Zoological Society of London's EDGE program. She is the driving force behind this important, impactful initiative, which focuses on saving endangered frogs of the Western Ghats. These frogs, known for their distinctive dancing movements during mating, face severe threats from habitat loss and climate change. The project not only aims to conserve these species but also works to educate communities about biodiversity and importance of conservation. Dr. Mudge completed her PhD at ATRI Bangalore and her master's in community based rehabilitation from Manipal University. She has also trained in ecology and conservation at Shingwabana Tropical Botanical Garden, Chinese Academy of Sciences. Dr. Mudge also loves working with children and college students, which led her to help set up ATRI's Jal Jungle Jameen program to promote STEM education. Dr. Mudge, a very warm welcome to HT.
Thank you, Vikram. So,
Okay. So, could you please tell us more about the Dancing Frog project and what inspired you to start it?
of course, I think we should start
But
by
yeah, but
just,
before you start, I'm sure just like me, most of our viewers haven't seen a frog dance. So, why don't you start with a video?
yeah, let's do that. Let's start with the video.
Okay. So, explain to us what did we see here and what was it? This.
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the most important question is that why would a frog dance, right? Like for us, I mean, as humans, I think dance is a way of, self-expression. But to think about it, like, why would a frog dance is a very interesting question. And I want our viewers to actually just, take some time to go through this slide and to just kind of, come up with answers of out of all the six that I have listed here on the screen to,
Yeah.
just to yourself, or maybe like you can write it down in the comments. What do you think? Why would a frog dance? Could it be to attract mates? Could it be for territorial defense? Or could it just be that they are communicating in a very noisy environment? And fourth, could it be all of the above? Like, are they doing it all? Or fifth, that it's only for fun and leisure, just like us, that it is possible. And even in wild animals, you do see a lot of activities that they do just for fun or just for leisure, okay? And then
Yeah.
probably the sixth one, the most pessimistic person, that it's none of the above. Probably it's something else, that they have something else to say and they have something else to do, and there's some other meaning to the whole dance that we are calling it. So I want
Okay.
our viewers to like kind of just, take some time and to write down their answers.
Yeah, I'd encourage our viewers to comment down their answers so we could know what people think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Meanwhile, you can move forward with the presentation.
sure. So firstly, we will start by understanding what is the habitat where a frog lives, and then we'll tackle the dance question later on. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
come back to it. But let's just first understand where exactly is the frog living. Okay, and I want you to imagine when you go towards the Western Ghats, when you go to say Annamalais or to Madikeri, Kurg, maybe what is the landscape that you see? You mostly see what are called as tropical evergreen forests and part of Western Ghats. We know that Western Ghats are a biodiversity hotspot. They're a global biodiversity hotspot. But one of the very interesting things about Western Ghats that I actually find very interesting is that it is one of the hotspots which has the highest population density. So there are a lot of people who live in our Western Ghats. And with that population density, it's still considered as one of the hottest global biodiversity hotspot. And what you see over here is a picture of a zoomed out picture of a tropical evergreen forest and the Shola Sky Islands. So what you see on the peaks of the mountain is like a mosaic-like thing, which has meadows, forest trees, and then it has some patches of stunted growth, which is just the grassy patches. And that together, collectively, is called as the Shola Sky Islands. Um, and when you now, what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in into all the aspects of the tropical evergreen forest that I just spoke about. Okay. So as you
Sure.
move closer to that picture, okay, I want you to imagine that in the previous picture, we saw that there are these sky islands at the top, at the peak of the mountain. And then as you're lower down in the mountain, you see very dense vegetation. Okay. And this is the dense vegetation that you are seeing over here, like just dark green forest. And this is my advisor, Dr. Guru Raja, and I'm using him as a scale just for you to actually see how big is the landscape that we're talking about. And this railway track, you can also see that it's kind of a double railway track. That but when you look at it at this view, so we are actually climbing to the peak that you just saw in the previous photo. And
Okay.
Dr. Guru Raja is actually standing on one of those peaks in the stunted growth in the Shola Sky Islands. Okay, now we are moving closer and closer to where the dancing frogs are going to are living. Okay, so below the railway track is a stream of water. Okay, and this is a freshwater stream. As you know that when it rains, there are small streams that are formed, and this is one of the streams of the Western Ghats. And all that you see around here is basically the evergreen forests that we are talking about. So these are all mid to high elevation evergreen forests where these streams are. Okay. And as we move in closer to the stream, so we're actually close to the edge of the stream that I just showed you. And there you don't just kind of, so we're not just looking at dancing frogs, but we also see a lot of other interesting animals like this, viper over here, this
Yeah.
uh, pit viper over here. And as we go closer on the rocks of the stream is when you see the dancing frogs. So on in this picture, I don't know if you can point out, but there are a couple of frogs over here. And one of the
I can
easiest one
only,
is
yeah, I can only see one.
this. Yeah, so I want you to take some time to actually scan this photo and see how many you can count. Like just maybe try your luck.
Yeah, sure. One is pretty evident. Maybe a second one near the leaf.
Yeah.
That's it. Lux maxed out.
Yeah. So the thing is that just on all the rocks over here, there are at least two dancing frogs. The two that you pointed out are pretty evident. But if
Yeah.
you like see when you go closer to any stream that is at this mid to high elevation range, is that on every primary stream, mid to fast flowing streams, you'll find at least 2 to 3 dancing frogs sitting on the rocks of these streams, and they might also be hidden under the leaf, like this fellow or the second fellow over there was actually under the leaf, and as you move the leaves you probably like see a couple of them jumping again. So that
Okay.
is the landscape where these frogs are living. Now I also want to give a little bit of basics of what we this whole group of so-called dancing frogs. And I want to tell you that there are at least 24 different species of dancing frogs in the world. Okay,
Okay.
all of these dancing frogs are found in India. They are an endemic species. So endemic means that they're not found anywhere else in the world. They are found only here in our global hottest biodiversity hotspot of the Western Ghats. And that too, within the Western Ghats, we see them in the tropical evergreen patches, mid to high elevation patches. So not all the way up till the Shola Sky Islands, probably below that. So mostly it's like about 1200 meters. Above that is the Shola Sky Islands. Below that is where you find the dense tropical evergreen forests and these mid to slow, flowing streams. And these are the streams that actually hold the dancing frogs.
Okay.
And the
Fascinating.
approximate elevation is about 250 to 700 meters above the mean sea level. Now I also want to, so this is one type of habitat which the dancing frogs occupy. And so obviously, like not all 24 species of dancing frogs are found at one given stream. There can be two species or three overlapping species in each stream. But across the Western Ghats that, extends from Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka to Kerala, all of these states, all the tropical evergreen forests will hold some species of these 24 dancing frogs. And I also wanted to highlight that there is this very interesting kind of a forest type, okay, which is called the Myristica swamp forests. Now, these are freshwater swampy forests, again, part of the Western Ghats, and there are freshwater swampy habitats found across the globe, but I think the Myristica swamp type forest is something that is very unique to our country, and some of these swampy forests are also called as sacred groves. Now, sacred groves are um, they are just these forest patches uh, that are probably dedicated to a deity. So there is a deity for each different type of a sacred grove,
Okay.
and that forest is largely controlled by the community that lives around them. So it could be a community of priests and a village that manages that particular sacred grove, of how it looks, how it feels, and all the other aspects of like management of that particular forest. And
Okay. So,
Myristica,
just to ask you on this community aspect, how important is a community in the project, the Dancing Frog project that you have? Like, what is the significance of the community there? What role do they play there? How do you interact with the community and manage all these things?
yeah, so I think personally for me, I have seen that the whole idea of a protected area or a national park is very westernized for me, because because when the whole idea of protected areas came in, it was when indigenous people had to give way to make these protected areas, and so then they were managed by the state. And that's why it's not possible that if we have a protected area, that we kind of are able to manage the biodiversity across, because there is so much biodiversity, and it's not always true that that protected area will be able to hold that biodiversity that we're talking about. Oftentimes when protected areas are made, they are made for say one important species like a tiger or maybe an elephant or something that is quite large, quite charismatic. So oftentimes these protected areas might not hold lesser known species or lesser known taxa like the dancing frogs or even several other herpetofauna or other birds, maybe so many different things. Plus, when you talk about an ecosystem as a whole, there are several different aspects to that particular ecosystem, and that protected area might not have all of the ecosystems that we need. So, with dancing frogs, what we have seen is that are not only inside the protected area boundaries; they are also in reserve forests. They're also in community managed forests. They're also outside of all these forest labels that we have given. So, when it comes to this, it's important that there is some form of community involvement, because it's only with the help of people that we will be able to kind of manage our biodiversity. Across the globe, we have seen so many different, reports coming in that 90% of 80% of our biodiversity is 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 lost. The World Economic Forum also said that biodiversity crisis is, I think, the top third or fifth on the list of their, global crisis list that they have come up with. So there are several things, and that's why it's important that we kind of take the buy-in of, the community that lives around that land, And so they can actually see how the streams are changing. Because if there is a change in that stream, if I'm sitting here in Bangalore, I don't know. But if somebody there knows that, oh, the stream flow is not as much, or it has reduced, or there has been some threat over there, or that's like sudden dam, sudden access roads, certain river linking projects coming in. All of these several different projects that come in, the community members will know about this first. So they act as a network of kind of protecting these important critical habitats that we have today. So that's why I feel like we need protected areas, no doubt in
But
that.
yeah,
And we
but
also
people,
need
these
people.
community members, they do play a significant role.
Yeah, and they play a very significant role for us to kind of see how the forests are changing.
Yeah.
Plus, I've also seen that when I have interacted with people who manage the Myristica swamp forest, for example, I've seen that they know a lot of the stories that probably we would have never heard, and they know about the deities, why they're worshipping it, and some certain cultural practices that they kind of keep on going that helps maintaining the swamp forest. So I think that is why also a community participation and a community conservation project is really, really important.
Okay, so coming back to the question, why does a frog dance? Why will a frog dance? L-
Yeah, we'll come to that after this, after we play a video of the Myristica swamp forest, because we're
Sure.
discussing
Yeah.
the swamp forest, and I want our viewers to actually see how beautiful this swampy forest is and what I mean by it. So here in the picture, you are seeing like these kind of roots that. So this is basically a mangrove.
Okay.
So it functions like a mangrove, and all these roots that you are seeing that they come above the ground. So they're really interesting. And I think if we can just play the Myristica swamp video. So the ground of this forest is completely, in water. It's just water basically, and you see the canopy. The canopy is really, really high, and a lot of these forests are also called, dark forests or black forests in, I think, the local language, and that kind of shows so much. That kind of talks so much about this forest type, because that shows us that there's very little light that actually comes to the ground, that reaches the ground. And even in such less lit conditions, we see several different types of animals that kind of stay in this forest, including the dancing frogs.
Okay.
Yeah. So coming to your question about, let's like kind of unpack the dance. I don't know if we can see the poll results, or
Yeah,
like we can really see
people
what
have
people have
commented,
said. Yeah.
but no one no one is sure about why do frogs dance ultimately. So we would like you to explain.
Yeah, so I'll explain what we know about, but there's a lot of scope in understanding why they dance. Okay, so if anybody is interested in writing research proposals and learning more about it, you're more than welcome to write an email to me. Okay, so I'll tell you what I know about the dancing frogs already. Okay, we don't have a lot of research papers published on this, but we do have some certain very good quality research papers published, and what the dancing is actually is in the scientific terms is called as foot flagging. So it is where it's a kind of a visual signaling behavior, like how I'm doing my hands.
Okay.
And many a times this visual signaling is to attract mates, and it is also to signal territory, to signal strength. Mostly we have seen that it's the males of the dancing frog family that perform these visual signaling behavior. Many
Okay.
times with children, we do this dancing frog dance. Okay, that's also interesting. Maybe we can talk about it later. But yeah, but this is actually a visual signaling behavior, and mostly it is to signal the mate that I am a strong enough male, and that uh, among like the group of males to kind of stand out, so that the female knows who to mate with. Right? It
That
is
sounds
kind
pretty
of
human to me.
yeah, but unfortunately, human males don't dance so much.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of an evolutionary adaptation. because I showed you. So I started with the habitat just for everyone to see, what kind of a unique habitat conditions are these frogs living in. This is not like a regular kind of a habitat that you see, in your everyday life. At least in my everyday life, I don't see noisy streams. I just see puddles of water in Bangalore. So, so this is a very unique kind of an evolutionary adaptation of habitat, where the dancing frog lives. The habitat, so for the dancing frog to adapt to such a unique habitat, um, noisy environments and torrential streams. So just the calling of, just calling somebody to kind of signal for mating is not enough, because there's so much surround sound. And the dancing frogs are not the only ones who are performing this kind of a visual signaling. There are several other species, mostly living in torrential landscape, torrential streams, like the Bornean frog that is found in Borneo. So you know the Bornean island, which is a very unique kind of a tropical evergreen forest. Uh, Even there, you find a lot of these torrential streams, noisy streams, where a frog is probably not able to communicate very well, and therefore they have developed this kind of a visual signal that, hey, I am dancing, so look at me. And then they also kind of climb on the highest rock. So probably a frog on the lower rock will not be visible to the female, because we've seen that mostly females will sit on the edges of the stream. So for her to see what exactly is happening, the frog has to also jump on the highest rock, and then on the highest rock it has to perform the signaling, to kind of get that attention and then mate. Yeah,
Okay,
so that
that's
is
pretty fascinating.
attacking the dance. Yeah.
So
And
in this females don't dance at all.
no,
Okay.
unfortunately not. In most of the wild, you know, in the wild scenarios, it's the men who actually put in a lot of effort um, in getting attention from the females. And also among amphibians, actually the number of males is a lot higher compared to the number of females. So the ratio would be around, say, five males is to one female. So that male has to fight, four other males to actually get the attention of the female and then mate. So so because the ratio is also so skewed, so the males have to put in a display to
Okay,
show.
sure.
Yeah. Yes. So
Yeah.
let's move on. I also want to talk about, like in the beginning when we started the Dancing Frog project, and you also said in the intro, thank you for that. So when we started it, actually, I started it because I had gotten this fellowship from ZSL, and this fellowship was meant for what are called as the edge species, the evolutionary distinct and globally endangered species. So these are species that are very unique. So evolutionary distinctiveness means that there is nothing like it in the world. And even within the group, this species kind of forms a separate branch of itself, and it doesn't have very closely related brothers or sisters. So that is what is meant by an evolutionary distinctiveness. And globally endangered, which also means that they are found in very, very small areas, geographic areas. So when we started the project, we started it for one of this species, one of the edge species, called the Micrixalus kottigeharensis, which was found from a village, Kottigeher, and that's why it was called the Kottigeher dancing frog. And when we started it, it was found in only 2 or 3 locations in across the Western Ghats, and we did our surveys for almost 3 years. I was living in the field all the time. We were just like surveying right up from north of Karnataka, north of also Western Ghats, to across south, which was its range at that time, and we found several different. Locations of the dancing frog. So I just want to take a minute and show this map as well. So earlier you can see like these known records were only from here below south, from like the lower region of the Western Ghats. But then when we started carrying out our surveys, we found that they are also present in like the north of Karnataka, and there were several other locations where it was kind of seen and recorded for the first time. And that led to actually downlisting of the species from being a global endangered animal to being a vulnerable animal. However,
Okay.
a very interesting thing about this entire genus of dancing frogs is that it is still fifth on the list of top 10 threatened genera of the world. So, no matter the downlisting of one particular species, the entire group still remains highly threatened. And it also kind of makes it to the the top 10 threatened genera of the world. So amphibians as a whole are in the top 10 threatened genera, and this particular genus in itself also makes it to the top um, and I think that is also because it is a very highly unique habitat plus very sensitive requirements of how it is going to breed, how it is going to survive, and that kind of makes it to the list.
Okay.
So I just want to also take some time to appreciate, tadpoles. So I personally find tadpoles very interesting. When I was very young, I have grown up in Nagpur actually, surrounded by these tiger habitats. Nagpur is also the tiger capital of the world now. But that time when I was growing up, I used to live in this village called Chandrapur, and our house was actually inside a national park, inside the tiger sanctuary. So there, many times I remember waking up to all these puddles that would form in monsoons, and we'd see several tadpoles, like just several tadpoles. I remember seeing fireflies, and then remember seeing tadpoles. Like that was my routine. But as we are seeing now, we don't find as many tadpoles. And if you ask any child, probably I don't know if they have seen tadpoles in their surroundings, especially in the cities, especially in like most urban areas. You don't find them that easily now. So
Yeah, most of us would not have seen tadpoles.
yeah, yeah, and then also there is this understanding mostly in our books. Because I was working with A3, I kind of saw in the environment education program that a lot of books kind of cover these tadpoles as something that are only aquatic, that you find them if it rains, then you'll find tadpoles. That's it. But it's not like that. So there are several different tadpoles, and they live in different habitats. So there are tadpoles that live in the water. Sure, they're like fish, and you could like kind of confuse them. So here that you see on the black ones are aquatic tadpoles. So they are living deep in water, in streams, puddles, wherever. But the one that you see on the leaf is a terrestrial tadpole. So that doesn't need as much deep waters as probably the aquatic tadpoles. And these are also from a endemic genus of frogs that is found only in the Western Ghats, Indirana genus, and they have terrestrial tadpoles. But the dancing frog tadpoles live underground. So they don't live in water, they don't live on the land, but they're like literally inside. So they're called as fossorial tadpoles. And after scraping the first layer of gravel in a stream, in the freshwater stream that I showed you earlier, you see the nest of the dancing frog. So the picture C over here, you can see there are little tiny eggs of the dancing frog. So we kind of remove. So basically, we tagged the animal, and by tagging, I don't mean that I harmed the animal, because we were dealing with endangered animals. So we had this very ethical protocol of doing scientific work. Not a single individual was killed when I was studying them. So even for science, we made sure that we had taken only swabs and that the animal was perfectly fine. So we collected DNA, but we used something called as a buccal swab. And when we tagged this particular couple as well, that you can see in slide photograph A, is when we had put a little, we had a flag that we had put to mark the nesting site, and then after 15, I think 17 days or something, we saw that the eggs had hatched, and were they were tadpoles basically. So the slide D and E is what you see as fossorial tadpoles, which were that live underground. So when any and that's why I say that certain things like river linking projects, for example, or dams or highways that completely stop the waterway from functioning the way it is, when it stops the primary streams, it's when we know that there won't be any dancing frogs left, because they are so unique, and then their reproductive requirements are so unique. So the eggs have to be submerged for say 15 days, and only then they will hatch. And then the tadpoles will also grow to a certain stage underground, under the first layer of the gravel, and then they will come out as froglets. And then you see them sitting on the rocks of the stream. And this
So
is a paper that
they,
we have
they
published.
live underground, but for show of strength, they go on the rocks.
Yeah. Yes, that is exactly what they do. Yeah, I also want to say that this is a species distribution model in scientific terms, and I knew that I didn't want to use so much science, but then I have a PhD, so I have to show off also. So this is basically a model that we made to just show you, like, in the current climatic scenario, what is the situation and how much is the species occupying the habitat across the Western Ghats. And you see that the darker areas are the areas of suitability. So you do find them only in the peak, in the Western Ghats that I told you about. But as and when, the temperatures increase, and then we see that there is sporadic monsoon or erratic monsoons, or the whole monsoon season changes. And then, even like as we know, global warming is happening, so several different things are changing in how we see the seasons. So more and more climate change, and more and more climate change scenarios going to the worse, you see that the areas that are suitable for the dancing frogs will reduce. And you see that in like the last two models over here. So this is basically a map of peninsular India. Okay. And it shows that the area of suitability will reduce significantly. So with a kind of some anthropogenic stressors, which is with human influence, we can still maintain some dancing frog habitats as they are. But as climate change, kind of progresses, then we see that there will be significant reduction in the area that is suitable for the dancing frog. And so it is possible that they will move towards, extinction, towards more threatened species. And so there will be lesser suitable habitats for them.
So the situation seems dire. Aren't governments working on it, or there are there any organizations in professional capacity doing some work?
Um, so there are certainly different organizations that are working on, lesser known taxa. There are people who are working on it. There is a lot of interest that I have seen since we started the project back in 2018 to now in 2024. I can definitely say that there's a lot of interest among people. But whether the governments are working towards it is something that I cannot answer, because I feel like as a country we should kind of invest in a lot of resources towards research, towards funds. And then there should be a process that kind of gives it in the to the right people, so that we can see enough results. So that is certainly something that has to be improved. But yeah, the situation is dire actually, and I do think that as a country, we shouldn't have to kind of fight for these things. We shouldn't be fighting for conservation. Why are we fighting for it? Why are we rebelling for like something that is so natural to us, right? That we should be okay. It should be a lifestyle that we are, just conserving. But unfortunately, that is not the case, and so we have to fight. So, and there are like just too many battles to fight. There are academic battles. There are the funds. There are like just so many things. And unfortunately, I feel like there's not enough that has been done, and there's scope for like a lot of more donors, for a lot of CSR fundings, for a lot of like um, yeah, I think NGOs that could potentially work with lesser known taxa, and to keep the critical habitats intact. So I also want to end. I think this should be my last slide. I have a few more slides, two more
Okay.
slides, but I wanted to show you this poster that we had created back in 2019, I think, when So we called the Kottigeharensis dancing frog as Kapendra, which was inspired by Upendra, and it did get really popular, and it did help us, get the buy-ins of a lot of community members.
Okay.
And this was kind of inspired by old movies, movie style posters, and so. But later on, COVID hit, and so we were not able to do like the exact, ground surveys that we were supposed to do. But the project is still on, and we kind of still use these posters to kind of get buy-ins of people. And these are photos from where we have surveyed actually. So this is where roads and highway constructions come in. And I'm not saying that we don't need roads and highways. We definitely do. And I understand access more than anything else, being a woman. So I know that access is really important. But I think that there has to be a way to do it in a way that is least destructive. That kind of also caters to the biodiversity that we are dealing with. So you can't just simply go around, cutting trees for highway projects or even for like a river linking project. There has been so much that has been going on in the Western Ghats, and such critical habitats have been lost when such big projects come in. So, lastly, yeah, I just want to say that, like I already said, that I mean, we shouldn't conservation as protection. It's kind of safeguarding. So when we have the species in hand, we should kind of put in resources to keep that species as it is, rather than waking up like how things progress with, say
Yeah.
for example, Great Indian Bustard. Now we're trying to put in so much money into that you want that species to come back. But when the species was there, that time nobody took interest. And that's what we're seeing with most biodiversity. When the species is alive, when it's in its natural, habitat, and when there are people who could work on it potentially to conserve it, that's when we're not pumping in enough money. And then later on, when it's like gone, threatened, whatever, extinct in the wild, then we'll like kind of figure out how to get it back.
For people, our viewers watching this, what would you like? How could they pitch in? What could they do right now to contribute to this project?
So right now, I mean, since I'm a researcher, I mostly just write research grants and hope that I will get funding. But if I don't get funding, I mean, we do have a website which was made using AI. So it's called the Dancing Frog Project, and you could look at it. My email address is also given. So if like there are people, funders, also people, so a lot of these private landowners, we work with them together so that they can have certain practices in place that leaves the stream as it is. So we work with several private land owners, homestay owners who are interested in the Dancing Frog project, and with them we just kind of devise some program, basically a
So
protocol to say how to.
just out of curiosity, sorry to interrupt. Just
Yeah.
out of curiosity, what interests them, the private landowners or homestay owners? What
So,
interests them in this
I think
Dancing Frog project?
so for them, I think it is to do largely with wildlife. So if like people are eco-conscious, I think they just kind of like to have their habitat in a way that kind of holds a lot of biodiversity. And dancing frogs in itself are quite interesting. Like they're very interesting to look at. Firstly, like an animal dancing in front of you. What can be more interesting than that? And many times because the other biodiversity has been declining so badly, frogs are something that you can see anytime. Like, in monsoons, this is a sure shot sighting that people have. And most of these private landowners, when they have homestays, they have people who are eco-conscious coming to them. And they also
Yeah,
want to see and experience all the wild and, natural things. So when you see a frog or when you see a tadpole, it's very easy to kind of connect to it. So
yeah.
I think that kind of interests them a lot.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So, this chart, tell us about this chart. And as I was reading through your LinkedIn, you work with kids and students to encourage them for conservation. So, how does that work? And
Yeah.
are there any cool experiences that you might want to share? Like, are
Um,
kids interested in studying conservation? Are college students interested in doing conservation, knowing about it?
I think so. Back when I started, in 2014, 12, 20, 13, 12, 14, at that time, I mean, we knew climate change was happening even then, right? We knew that biodiversity crisis was happening even then. But now what you see is that there are a lot more people interested in it. There are a lot more funders, as in people CSR, who want to kind of do something for it, but they just don't know what to do. So with the school children also, we have seen that there is a lot of interest, but unfortunately the way conservation science has also progressed over the years is where it has not kind of seen a lot of improvement. It has not seen a lot of jobs. It has definitely seen an increase in the amount of jobs that were there back compared to 10 years back. So there is interest, and it is only going to grow. So I feel like working with children and working with like even these college students, I have seen that they want to do something. There is a lot of interest, but it's like, can I leave my corporate job and then do it, or can I just do it on the side? So those are the things that mostly the college students are dealing with. But with the school children, it's largely just curiosity. They like being in the wild because it kind of is an excuse for them to get out of their classroom, which is great. Like, I'm all for that. So I like that. And we kind of also work sometimes with these schools that are in the villages, and so then the structure is kind of different anyway. So plus, a lot of times I remember there was this one teacher who used to work with us, and she had taken us to like the streams across her school. But in her school, there were hardly like 10 students. So then we had to work with like just those many. And there is an active interest, is what I have certainly seen. Like, there's a lot of interest among school kids.
So during your work with students and college students and kids, you might have come across with people who are climate deniers. How do you deal with them? Like, what's your experience there?
I feel like I come across with climate deniers more in the upper middle class circles, frankly. I don't come in contact with climate deniers so much in the villages, because there I think they kind of have seen that natural space. So there's a lot of interest in looking at it very differently. And there's also, this has just been my experience, okay, I don't know. But I've seen that mostly when I interact with you know, in the circles which are like more upper middle class or more cities, more urban people, I have seen that there is a lot of, अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं, climate change तो हो रहा है. But I'm like, but that's also because of you, right? Like, it's just not happening on its own. It's happening because of all of us. So it's like there has to be some way of knowing that, me as a person, what can I do? And you as a person can also kind of stand against the governments, because you have that power with you to like mobilize a group to join the existing campaigns that are there. So there's a lot of scope for you to do certain things. It's But I've seen that mostly in the urban circles, it's like कि, अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं, it's happening. And that they also do that with their children, which is something that I find absolutely annoying, because as a child, if you're not putting that child in nature, then you have really done wrong to the child. So that has to come from the parents, and that has to also come from like all of the people who have kind of are climate deniers or who have given up on the climate change battle and the biodiversity crisis battle.
Okay.
So yeah.
So we are coming to an end to our session webinar. So what's that one message that you'd like to give to someone watching from the government or youngsters in college or school students that makes them like understand climate more, connect with it,
I think
and
one
how can they learn more about your Dancing Frog project as well?
So, I mean, most of the project activities are on my social media, and you can also write to me. And the website, the Dancing Frog Project .card.io, is also alive. So there also I have given like a box to kind of get in touch. But I think one of the messages that I want to give to everyone is that, conservation is not a lone battle. So it's not for some people to do it. It's for all of us to do it. And just like how several different countries had come together to sign the ozone treaty, to deal with the ozone layer uh, situation, we have to come together like that with the climate change situation, with the biodiversity situation as well. And it can't happen just in pockets. It has to happen, everybody has to be eco-conscious at some level, and you should put in effort to actually, from your side, to be like a part of the solution. That you shouldn't be a part of the problem, just simply going around bursting firecrackers, just simply going around using plastic. There's no meaning in this. You have to understand that you have to, in your everyday life, learn how to be sustainable, learn how to reduce your plastic, learn how you can stand in one of the activist marches that you probably see. So you have to be a part of the solution and you can't be a problem. And I
And
think it
when
all.
it comes to conservation, there's very little resource available, like in terms of knowledge as well. So,
Yes.
would you like to suggest few resources where people could go on, read about it, learn more about it, educate themselves?
I mean, yeah, as in resources wise, I think there's a lot of information just on Google, just it's at our disposal actually, just to look at it. But I don't know that, but there have been a lot of books that have been written. I think one of the books that I read during my PhD coursework was How Much Should One Consume? It was by Ramchandra Guha, and it was a very interesting book. And I think people should really read that book. Then, and there are several other books like, this Jane Goodall's biography is very very interesting. She has a book on hope, on how she kind of motivates herself. So Jane Goodall is the person who the chimp woman who uh, and she's a very popular person. So her book, even Silent Spring, like there are several books at disposal. Like if one wants to read, it's like there's no end to it. But yeah, these are some basic books that I would suggest to start for anyone, and then you have the internet in your hand anyways.
Okay. So that's the end of our webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Mudgi, for
Thank you.
sharing these valuable insights. It's really inspiring to hear about your work. I hope young people would take cue and do
Yeah,
something
even
about
older
it.
people. Why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you, Vikram.